Welcome to another edition of FanDuel Friday, sponsored by the good folks of FanDuel and RotoGrinders. And we are back here for another edition of it. I am Andre Alford, and I'm here with my buddy, my good friend, one of the best players in the industry, TJ Zwarych. How is everything going with you tonight, man?
Life's going pretty well. We're still hoping for Ramondre Stevenson to have a big second half here. Patriots defense to have a big second half so both of us can win some money. We gave out some good picks on NFL Crunch Time for the Thanksgiving slate. Hopefully some people won some money. They played their Isaiah McKenzie's, their DJ Charks, their Richie James's, and then hopefully plugged and played in their expensive guys in there as well, and Ezekiel Elliott as well, and took down some money. But Thursday's over. It's Friday. We're looking on to Sunday, and I'm excited to start breaking down this slate.
Yes, I am too. Definitely, it's going to be an interesting one. I think we don't have a game total that's only highest is 48. So I think it's going to be a really, really, really interesting slate. Especially we got like Pat Mahomes against the Rams. We got Lamar Jackson against Baltimore. Going against Jacksonville here, and Tua against Houston. So, and hopefully maybe get Kyler Murray back here, but we'll see. So we got some interesting spots with some teams. Things that are definitely standing out for sure, but not that really high in totals besides one game. So let's break it down real quick and just go through this here. So first, we're going to start with the quarterback position. But actually, before we get to the quarterback position, what is your big overview of this whole slate from just looking at it from a 50,000 point view?
It's going to be a high scoring slate. I think Lamar Jackson is kind of my top option on the board, as the projections say. Number 2 is going to be Patty Mahomes. And then from there's a few teams I'm very interested in full stacking. We're going to obviously talk a little bit more about Samaje Perine later, but in my lineups that I may be interested in fading him, I'll play some Joe Burrow. I'm going to love some Geno Smith stacks this week. Get a little bit of Tua Tagovailoa in there, mix in a little Kyler Murray. But for the most part, I'm going to be focused on Patty Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. Even though with the low totals that they have going against good defenses, I guess the Rams have not been that great of a defense all year. But who are you like? Pat Mahomes, like obviously we got Tony who didn't practice. I think today from what I'm looking at on Thursday. And I know he only has his, and I don't know if Juju's going to be back as well. So Pat Mahomes would be very interesting to me from a GPP perspective because we only know his one target he focuses on, and that's Kelsey. But all those other guys are going to be pure like dart throws to see who he's going to throw to as well. So how are you handling that type of situation on the slate?
It'll depend a lot on if Juju is out or not, but kind of what I'm thinking is I love to do I think my optimal lineup quarterback play this week, my single entry is going to be Lamar Jackson. And then when I'm looking at somebody like Patty Mahomes, I'll play him with Kelsey. I'll play him with Marquez Valdez-Scantling and even Justin Watson, who had 4 targets last week, got quite a few snaps, especially after Tony went down. And so I don't mind running a little Watson, Valdez-Scantling, and Kelsey stack with those cheap receivers, allowing me to pay up for other positions and then other expensive receivers today, like a Tyreek Hill.
Okay, yeah, I definitely get that, and I think that is a good option that we have today on the slate. So, just from my overview too, with that, is there? Well, I guess more so, is there any I know with the Juju news that's going to matter, but is there one besides Kelsey that would stand out to you a lot?
I mean, if Juju's out, yes, all 3 of the receivers, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, and Valdez-Scantling will be very enticing plays for me. People I'd try and get double the field on in tournaments.
Okay, so all 3 would be enticing. I thought I would but no, not as I guess a single favorite one that you would be like, okay, I got to prioritize. Like to me personally, I would probably want to go with more so. I know the popular player probably more so MVS, which we would expect that because that would probably become the number 1 wide receiver, with Tony being doubtful, and Juju not practicing. I'm assuming he's not going to play again this week because it's Thursday night when we're recording this. But that's just not looking good for towards the end of the weekend, going into the weekend, unless he just clears concussion protocol somehow, some way. Um, but I do kind of like Sky Moore here as an option personally. I just hope he gets a lot more run.
Sky would probably be my favorite
Yeah.
option of that crew. 6 targets last week.
Mhm.
Hardman had been kind of running those Tyreek Hill routes. Then 2 weeks ago it was Tony. Then he got hurt on the first drive of the game last week, and Sky Moore went immediately into that role. Like that's kind of one of the reasons I like Mahomes so much is we know who to put him with this week.
Yeah.
We're not choosing between 6 receivers who are going to share snaps.
Mm-hmm.
No Tony, no Juju, no Hardman. There's only 3 really left. And so I love rolling with mix and matching all 3 of those. Kind of at first glance, something I think I would like to do would basically be like have my biggest team be a Lamar Jackson team, still mix in my Geno Smith and my Tua stacks and the like throughout, but have my next 3 biggest teams after my one kind of optimal Lamar one be Mahomes with all 3 receivers, Mahomes with 2 and Kelsey, and just different variations of that.
Okay. Like I like that, especially when you said a 3 receiver combo, because we know that those are the type of slates when this stuff like that happens and it takes it down. I personally think that when it comes, it's like since we know, like you said, it's pretty much going to be probably. I'm pretty sure it's going to be condensed like just those 3 receivers. I just like I said, I don't see no way they play. But I think I would just automatically say if Kelsey's whatever lineup that Patrick Mahomes is in, Kelsey has to be there automatically, or vice versa. We have.
I would say I'd be fine with 3 pass catchers, but I don't think it needs to be Kelsey. Like I think it needs to be Kelsey or all 3 receivers.
Yeah.
Like just what if Kelsey doesn't catch the touchdowns? What if they're long bombs and then they run in the second half? That kind of thing. Like if Mahomes throws 4 touchdowns and he throws 1 to Sky Moore, 2 bombs to Valdez Scantling, and another 1 to Watson, that's how you win $1 million. Like that's the kind of thing that's everybody who is playing Patrick Mahomes also is playing Travis Kelce. So I'm not saying don't play Travis Kelce by any means. I'm just saying play Travis Kelce or 3 receivers. Like set that rule that I want 3 of these players in every lineup, that kind of thing.
Okay. And on that case, obviously, I think Stafford's coming back this week. So would you run it back with, like, I know it's going to be kind of hard. Like, I know at this point we're just talking strategy because that's what the show's about anyway. So from a strategy perspective, obviously with you running 3 receivers, I would assume you're running it back. Like who would you run it back with then on the Rams side? Who do you think is a viable option? Like, do we go back to Allen Robinson, who we know finally had a good game, I guess you could say, because he scored a touchdown? Or do we not? But the targets are still not fully there. 5 targets, all 47 yards for 1 touchdown. Like it's not, to me. I'm not confident in the play with him. But how do you feel about the options that for the Rams today on the other side?
I don't know how much I really need to play a Ram this week. Like the 13.5 total. Do we actually is Stafford back? Because he hurt himself again last week.
I thought he is he not, maybe I'm misreading it wrong. Let me double check again.
The Rams are expected to give young QB Bryce Perkins first team reps this week.
Okay, so maybe I misread that then. I must have read something else.
Yeah, so Bryce he's expected to be the starting QB in this one, and so because of that, I don't really think I need to run it back. The Chiefs are a team that we've seen, even if they're up 3-4 touchdowns in the second half, just absolutely keep pouring it on teams and keep throwing the ball until the very last minute of the game when they're kneeling. However, if I was going to have a run back, and I think this is the perfect time for let's bump it over to the running back position, there are a lot of really cheap backs who are very interesting this week. And one of them that's going to go overlooked that I do think is very interesting is Kyren Williams. No more Darrell Henderson. This is a guy that's been on injured reserve all year that they've said they've wanted to get more and more involved as the year goes on to finish out here. He's a young running back. They want to see what they have with him. And with Henderson gone, you're looking at just Akers and Kyren Williams as these two main guys. Maybe Malcolm Brown will still be in there getting a touch or two, but they want to see what they have in this guy. He's fresh. He got more snaps and more touches last game than the game before. 4 touches in his first game, 8 touches in his second game, doubled it. I think we could see 15 to 20 touches from him in this game. And if they're down, which we expect, it will not be Kyren Williams. It will not be Cam Akers in the game. It's going to be Kyren Williams. And so I think this could be a game where we could actually see 10 carries and 8 targets for Kyren Williams.
Okay, yeah, I don't blame you for that at all. I definitely can see that happening for sure. I'm gonna look more into this quarterback probably when we get off the show to find out as far as like how he's played, if he played in the preseason, things of that nature, because I want to find out more like how is he reading the defense, because that's going to be very important, especially if you're talking about these dump off in the passing game work that Kyren Williams should be expected to be getting. I want to make sure like he's dumping the ball off to the running back in situations he needs to, and things of that nature. So that matters to me personally. So I'll be researching that heavy and probably bring that to when we have the Sunday show. But I like that. So I like all the takes that you had at what quarterback and bringing it to running back since we are here now. How do you feel about running back this week? Is this a position that you want to pay up, pay down? Like we got the highest running back being Derrick Henry going against Cincinnati, Christian McCaffrey in a good spot against New Orleans, Eckler, Josh Jacobs going against Seattle as well. Like, what are you looking at here when it comes to this running back part of slate?
This is a very, very difficult running back slate to me because there are so damn many guys that I want to play this week. And so another player that we didn't mention as a potential stackable option with Patrick Mahomes is Jerick McKinnon. I think he makes for a very interesting running back play this week. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is out. And so for me personally, I don't think I would have a lineup that didn't have Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, or Patrick Mahomes. I would have one. I don't see any possible way the Rams completely shut them out or anything like that. KC at home with this gigantic spread. And so I would be playing most likely Pacheco or Mahomes in every single lineup. I don't think I'd really want to run McKinnon out there naked. If I was running 150, I would. Mm-hmm. But I think he's more of somebody I would just want to stack with Patrick Mahomes. And then from there, it's kind of one of the reasons I'd love to play 150 this week, because there's about like a good 15 players I really want to play this week and not really anybody else. But I'd like to get a decent amount of my tier 1 of the pay ups would be McCaffrey and Eckler. Those would be, and actually probably just Eckler. Eckler would be priority 1 as my pay ups because Elijah Mitchell has just really been getting a lot of touches in there. And I mean, McCaffrey's going to get his too, but there's so many scoring options for that team that we need McCaffrey to get the touchdown. So my priority 1 in terms of the spend ups is Eckler. My next priorities are going to be Samaje Perine and Isaiah Pacheco. So I guess from an optimal standpoint, maybe not Pacheco because we're kind of projecting it to be mostly Mahomes out there doing the darn thing with Pierce and Latavius Murray having high projections right around them. These are guys I like as well. But for me, my top 2 priorities from an optimal lineup standpoint are going to be Eckler and Perine. Those would be the first 2 running backs I plug into my lineups. I do really like Dameon Pierce, Pacheco, Alvin Kamara, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, and then even that Kyren Williams call as well. But like James Conner, I like Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs. I'll sprinkle into lineups. Mm-hmm. Antonio Gibson, I don't mind as well. I want to get to all of these guys, but then not really anybody else. Like usually on a slate, there's 4 or 5 running backs I'll get up like upwards of 50% of, and then I sprinkle in 5 to 10% of maybe 20 running backs if I'm playing 150.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but on this slate, I don't think there's really going to be more than 2 I want to get upwards of 50% of, and then really only like a tight 10 to 15 in the rest of my entire 150 pool.
Yeah, I completely, I completely see what you're saying. I love the McKinnon call because I think a lot of people are going to be going to McKinnon. I think everyone's going to see Isaiah Pacheco and him having the 15 carries and the 100+ yard game and want to go back to that. So getting to McKinnon, I think, would be a different pace and someone that's going to come in, I think, low owned. So I love that call because it still is like I think it's more of a high hand approach still. So it could be either or any other week. So I like that a lot. And the Austin Eckler call, like I see, and that makes a lot of sense, especially because McCaffrey at 9-2, with all you said, all those scoring options that they have at the fingertips of Shanahan there, it makes it kind of hard to just want to focus on him at that price, even though it is worth it against the New Orleans Saints team, who's our team who's still banged up defensively. It just that price just makes it a little bit more difficult. So the Austin Eckler call I love a lot. I love getting to these guys with Josh Jacobs and Kenneth Walker, but we expect them to probably be extremely popular, but for good reason. There's no reason why these guys shouldn't get played. They're going to get a lot of work. Um, Now, one thing that how you handle this Tampa Bay situation? Um, they're going against Cleveland. Cleveland is horrible against the run. Like, are you going to go to like? I know you probably don't like Leonard Fournette, but would you go with like the would you go with the Rashad White here in this spot? Do you have any interest in him at all for this week?
If Fournette's in, I don't really have any interest in this backfield. If I was running 150, I'd include a little bit of Rashad White. If Fournette's out, that's where I'd all of a sudden have a lot of interest in a guy like Rashad White, and then I'd also have sprinkles of Keyshawn Vaughn.
Okay, all right, perfect. Yeah, because I personally feel like I think Rashad White is a fantastic play. I think regardless of the situation, because I think even if Fournette is in, I think it could be like a Tony Pollard Zeke situation, where he just gets majority of the work.
I agree. It's just, and I mean, don't get me wrong, this will be the problem for other people either as well, but just right between P. Ryan and Pacheco, a little bit above, you got Dameon Pierce. A little bit below, you got Gibson and McKinnon. I would just rather go there if Fournette's in as well. In 150, I'd include him in my pool, but it would just be a super large field thing.
Mm.
And then, I mean, so obviously, so we're looking at the blitz projection right now. I am kind of interested to look at the RG projections and elsewhere as well, but this projection for Latavius Murray just seems a little too high for me. Like, I'm not super comfortable with that. And so if he ends up somewhat chalky, he's definitely somebody I'd look to get under the field on. $6,200 Latavius Murray. But at this point, he's projecting really well. That's just, I don't really think going to be a play for me. But like, it's Eckler 1, it's P. Ryan 2, it's mixing matching other guys like Pierce, Pacheco, ATN, Walker, Jacobs is my third favorite option. But the one thing I know this week in my main lineups, it's going to be starting either with Lamar Jackson, Isaiah Pacheco, and Samaje Perine, or it's going to be starting without Pacheco and with Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's going to be the one of two ways I'm starting my lineups.
Okay, and I think that way honestly just gives you a nice little floor too, and they build up for the upside there that they will have and present. And I agree with that Latavius Murray projection. Like, I'm looking at now, like before you even brought it up, I was looking at it, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. But and that situation is really iffy in Denver.
And it's like Melvin Gordon just got cut, so I guess I get that's why, but they got so many guys there. Denver always does their running back by committee thing.
Yeah. It makes it so it's a scary situation. I personally would just stay away from it and not attack it whatsoever. I do also want to mention these Jets running backs. I am very interested in these guys here, Michael Carter and James Robinson. going against Chicago. I think that they can have a good day on the ground here. So these are guys I will be looking to get to in tournaments a little bit as well. And I do, and you mentioned briefly Damian Pierce. We know he had a bad game last time, but I think he go right back to the well here against Miami. And I think he's in a position where he can still run wild against that defense too as well. So let's move on to wide receiver. All right, so here at wide receiver, we got like 9,200 for Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams at 9K, and a little bit of a drop off for 600 with D Hop, going against the Chargers here. So how are you feeling about these top three wide receivers? Like, are you trying to get to a lot of them in your lineups, or and also I want to include a guy I guess like T Higgins in this conversation too, since he's still going to be the number one option, and you got Samaj P. Ryan taking over in the backfield for Joe Mixon.
You know, I think we need to take some victory laps because of how good we've been with receiver lately. Calls last week with Allen Robinson did decent, but the Amari Cooper is basically the top receiver on the slate last week. Then we're on this Thanksgiving show. Who are we telling people to play? But Isaiah McKenzie, Richie James, and they have the slate winning upside as well. And the Vikings scored a touchdown while we're on this show, so that's not so great for both of us. But at the receiver position this week, I'm excited to dive into this and find some sneaky favorites because of this Thursday slate. We don't really have any preliminary ownership to work with yet. And so we don't really necessarily know who's going to be sneaky, but we can still figure out the plays that we like. And so for me, Tyreek Hill is the priority up top. Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins are both great plays. They're fantastic. They're 2 and 3 for me in terms of spend ups, but Tyreek Hill is just the guy this year. He was pacing the legendary season Cooper Kupp has had, and his floors are 10-point games with 6 to 8 targets. His ceilings are 30-point games with 15 targets. He gets such valuable targets in terms of screen passes and deep balls. He's the number one red zone option for Tua. I think he's the top option on the slate. And then from there, because we do like some of these cheaper running back options, I think it's maybe possible to get to some of the maybe get to a 2 pay up option, get a Hill and a DeAndre Hopkins in your lineup together, something like that. But after those top expensive guys, my next favorite place is the low 7Ks. Looking at these Seattle receivers, both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. If I'm picking one, it's Metcalf, but they're both phenomenal plays. Keenan Allen, I think, is very interesting. He was on a pitch count last week, but still had 8 targets. And so no Mike Williams for this one. Gerald Everett is still questionable, especially if you get Everett out. Keenan Allen, I think, is a awesome tournament play, and is somebody that I'd be potentially even looking to get into my single entry optimal style lineups as well. And so it's the Hill up top, followed by the Adams and the Hopkinses. I think because of the price difference, I'd prioritize Hopkins as my number 2. My next favorite place to go is the mid tier with those 3 options. Like I mentioned, my favorites being Metcalf as well as Keenan Allen. And then if I'm not going with those guys, I just adore these super cheap Kansas City receivers this week. I think I'm going to have a very, very tight receiver pool. I don't think I'm going to be getting to too many guys today, because if I'm planning on playing just mostly Mahomes and mostly Lamar Jackson with just sprinkles of everybody else, like Geno Smith, whose receivers I love, I don't think I want to get to that many different receivers this week, so that I can make sure that I get to a ton of different running backs in this spot. One of the last guys I want to mention is 2 more that I want to make sure that I touch on, that I have a ton of interest in. I forgot about the first time. I just saw him pop up on the screen share here, and now I already forgot who it was. Oh, Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer, still no Mike Williams. He had a super big game last week, and he's developing a lot of chemistry with Herbert. 10, 8, and 10 targets in his last 3 games, and with no Mike Williams, he's still to get a ton of looks on the outside. Keenan Allen's going to be occupying that slot position, but Josh Palmer is going to be the number 1 receiver on the outside. So I really like him. I'll get to some Herbert and double stack those guys, but he's him and Keenan Allen, I don't mind getting to on their own. I like Allen Robinson as a potential run back, but again, it's a lot dependent on Bryce Perkins. And somebody I hope goes overlooked because his projection is crap. And if you're just looking at projections, you're going to X him out and not even notice. But this is especially a phenomenal play on the other side. But on FanDuel here, Demarcus Robinson, I think, is a phenomenal tournament play. We want to play Lamar Jackson because of his price on FanDuel. Not many people are going to play him. People are going to see Demarcus Robinson at 6,200 projected for under 10 points. Ugh, I don't want to do that. But he was getting so few routes and snaps at the beginning of the year. But ever since he hopped on with Baltimore, he kind of was getting more look from Lamar than people expected. Even with limited snaps, he was getting targets. Now with no Rashad Bateman, he's one of the guys that's been there longer now and is just one of the NFL vets of that receiving core, which sounds crazy. He's his number 1 receiver. Like, Lamar, don't get me wrong. Yes, it's Mark Andrews, but everyone is going to be stacking Lamar Jackson with Mark Andrews. And I think your way of getting different in tournaments would be firing up both those players together, Demarcus Robinson and Lamar Andrews. You can mix in Duvernay for the 3-man stack, but for me personally, that's only a 150 max scenario. I've been burnt too many times by Duvernay this year, just getting so few looks. He's just on the field so much. He got so many good looks at the start of the year, but he gets a 1 to 5 targets a game. He's only a 150 max guy. But I love me some Demarcus Robinson, who's been getting more and more targets the more time he spends with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I love that call. That's the calls we look for in GPPs. And like you said, on the other side, he is definitely a fantastic play. He's just too cheap over there. But on FanDuel, he's probably not going to be on, and I would still go to that because of that reason alone. I love that. So he would be someone that would definitely be considered in play, especially like you said with the Lamar Jackson stack. It would probably be only me running that. I would run that with him, Andrews, and Lamar. That's it. I'm not running no one else, and I'll be comfortable with that. And just let the chips fall where they may, personally, and find other spots to get different. And if I need anyone else, I do also I love all the receivers you touched on. I'm especially high on the guy here, honestly, obviously Tyreek and Devontae. But when you mentioned Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, those are the guys I'm looking to get to a lot of here in this spot going against Vegas. So these guys I love them a lot. I still think also Terry McLaurin is a guy that we still need to talk about and play. I know he didn't have the best game against Houston last time, but he's going against Atlanta, who plays a lot of man covers. I think that's a coverage that he can easily beat. I think he's still viable here, especially as long as Tyler Heineke's the quarterback. I think he's still viable. That's a good option. So he's someone I would definitely want to try to get into my lineups a good amount of today. And I also do like these San Francisco guys like Deebo Samuels and Brandon Ayuk. I think these are guys you want to get in addition to all the guys that you mentioned in your lineups here this weekend. And yeah, like you said, now that I'm thinking about it and we're going over this, I'm going to try to have I love the challenge of always trying to make a tight pool in general, but I'm really going to try to hone in and try to get a really extremely tight pool. It's going to be all or nothing kind of tight pool. Because some weeks you know how some weeks obviously when you max out, you end up playing too many guys because you just want to cover everything. So instead of trying to do that and cover everything, I want to try to see if I can just, let's just run these guys out there and they're in great spots and let the chips fall where they are going to be. We have low owned guys we're taking stands on and just figure out what happens from there.
One more person I want to touch on, or just more so situation I want to touch on. Rondale Moore got hurt last week. He's out. Marquise Brown, doubtful. Greg Dortch is questionable. If he plays, he had 10 targets in their absence last week. I think he becomes very interesting as a number 2 wide receiver. But if all of a sudden we see Dortch out as well, it might finally be the guy you have got burned on so many times this year because you play him even though he's washed. It might be AJ Green season, but also we could have a Robbie Anderson sighting like you're pulling up. That's possible, I think, if Dortch is out. And I think it's very interesting, the idea to do a Hopkins, Anderson, Green stack if all of a sudden you get Dortch out. And then if Dortch is in, I think he becomes a very interesting option in the receiving game as well.
Low key, I think this is a good play regardless because look at his price. He's 5'3". If he gives you that many points, 9 to 10 points, while your other spots are going off everywhere, and they are exceeding expectation by a lot and hitting their ceiling, I'll take 9 points from AJ Green at 5'3", 10 points from AJ Green at 5'3", and I bet you could be enough to win a GPP. So that's definitely a play I would love to try to be on, honestly, and get over the field on this week.
And yeah, more so, I think AJ Green you can play either way. That was more so you can only play Robbie Anderson if Greg Dortch is out.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, definitely. Robbie, I thought you were going with Robbie, but that's why I pulled him up. But hey, I agree with both of them. Robbie Anderson, I think it's a fantastic play with that, but I think AJ Green is a good play regardless because he's the number 3 option on that team. So let's move on to tight end, where we have obviously Travis Kelce leading the way with Mark Andrews. These two guys are always at the top, obviously, of the salary boards for tight ends because of how good they are here. So tell me, are these guys that you're going to have priority try to get in your lineups this week, or are you looking at a few other guys here like a George Kittle, and David Njoku here, or Jawan Johnson, who's been on a tear scoring touchdown after touchdown recently?
I'm not looking to mess around too much. I'll definitely have 30 plus each of Kelce and Andrews. I think Higbee is an interesting run back in that 3 receiver with Patrick Mahomes lineup that we were talking about earlier. Fade Kelce, run it with Higbee and the 3 receivers. I think that's a very interesting way to get different in the large field. Another run back type situation I don't mind is a Foster Moreau in my Geno Smith with Metcalf and Lockett stacks, but then you can even mix in a little of the Will Disleys and the Noah Fants in my stacks as well. This is going to be mostly a stack spot for me, a stacker run back. Get a ton of Andrews and Kelce, and then every other spot is either going to be a stack or a run back. I might look at a little bit of Greg Dulcich, a little bit of a Trey McBride. But for the most part, I'm just looking at the 2 guys up top, and then stacking and running back.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like, it's not that many tight ends I really want to go with this week. I think Kelce and Mark Andrews will be my priority. I like George Kittle a lot here in this spot too against New Orleans, even though they are really good at guarding the tight end position. I just think that George Kittle can still have one of these good games. He's up. He has the potential. I think he's one of the only few tight ends that has the potential of Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, and can get that. And for his price being what it is, I'm willing to take that chance against the Saints, who haven't been that great defensively this year, as we have hoped for them to be. I do like Jawan Johnson a lot, as I talked about briefly before. I think he's just scored a lot of touchdowns, and if the streak could definitely continue here in this game. The Foster Monroe you mentioned. The targets concern me a little bit, even though there's no one else there. I just don't know what I want to do with it. I think it is a good spot for him, though. I probably will honestly still end up playing him, but I just don't know how much I'm going to have. It's just disappointing, after game for them to not really get him the ball and have it go his way. But
that really shouldn't be a surprise considering that happened with Waller too.
Yeah.
The other thing I forgot to mention that if Gerald Everett plays,
Oh yeah,
Gerald Everett is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, tight end play on the slate. 5,200, no Mike Williams. This is just a phenomenal spot against Arizona for him. And so Gerald Everett will be one of my favorites if he plays. The FanDuel value on him is just incredible. Like, we pull up RG here, we see that other site's price up there. You never see tight ends this closely priced together because of just the different pricing systems. So he's a phenomenal value on FanDuel this week if he plays. And then if he does not play, if he happens to not be in the lineup, I don't know if we can go to anybody in that tight end situation. Like, I would have some interest in a guy like Trey McKitty if I was running 150 lineups, but outside of that, I don't know if I could pull the trigger. But something like a full stack of a little McKitty with Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer, if Everett's out, is somewhat interesting. But I'll tell you what's a hell of a lot more interesting is playing Gerald Everett with those two guys.
Yes, definitely, for sure. I like the Gerald Everett call. I think it's going to be sneaky because it's going to be I'm sure he's going to be a game time decision. So if he does end up being a game time decision, that's going to lower the ownership significantly on him, and that just gives you an edge right there in tournaments. So I love that call a lot. I would just literally make my stacks. What time is that game? That game is at 4:00. I would literally just make my stacks, and if I have to switch off to someone, I'll try to have some salary left over, a couple places open with that, so I can switch off to other guys. And
you realize you can just what you can do too in that worst case scenario is you just quick player replace to McKitty, and then if you can't change a few teams, oh no, you still get the starting tight end in your for the Chargers. But then you just look for all your McKitty teams first and adjust those.
Yeah, I would definitely do that as quickly as I possibly can. Yeah, but I like that option and that strategy as well too, for sure. So, think that's yeah. We're gonna touch on defense briefly before we get out of here. Is there any defenses that are standing out to you this week that you want to go with or mention, or have a lot?
Chiefs have a big old projection, and they are the top defense on the slate. They're the chalk. The next best option is going to be Miami if you can't quite afford the Chiefs. But I feel like in cash games and optimals, that's your team that you're paying up for today. And if I'm not going to, I'm trying to get very different by paying down. My favorite options to do that with would be, obviously we don't see ownerships yet, so it's very possible these teams may be highly owned, but I'm looking at this 4K range of Seattle, Atlanta, Denver, Carolina. That crew right there is my favorite set of defenses for tournaments. And then I don't mind getting to Tennessee or a Cincinnati as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I really like the Jets a lot. I don't think Fields end up going. I still think the Jets are still a good defense to go with, even though they're spend up as well as the Chiefs. Chiefs have to be the top player on the slate regardless. I think there's enough salary savings on here where you can get the Chiefs to fit them in against a quarterback that probably might not be that's obviously not experienced enough in a real life game. So Chiefs I do love a lot today. I even also might want to take some shots at the Chicago Bears a good amount. Just because, even though White is going to be a quarterback for the New York Jets, I like him a lot. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's definitely better than Wilson. So it's kind of, I guess, a double standard with it. But just in case White makes some mistakes and everything like it's possible, I think Chicago Bears have to be played a good amount. So he's someone I don't mind, especially with the weather possibly being bad there too. So I don't mind that as well. And Seattle would be also one of my favorite defenses going against Carr here in this spot. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I would go with. I don't think nothing else here. So, do you have anything else you want to say to the people before we get out of here?
Tell us who you think is going to be the highest scoring defense on this week's slate. Correctly pick the defense. Drop it in the YouTube comment section. Drop it in the FanDuel Friday page on RotoGrinders. Hit up Drizzy26_DFS on Twitter. TJ_Zwarych5 on Twitter. Let us know who you think is going to be the highest scoring defense, and the winner is going to get a free week of RG Premium. you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button there as well. Subscribe, hit the little notification bell on the RG YouTube page. And we got more FanDuel Friday coming with NBA as well. Straight from here, I'm off to record the morning grind with Stevie for NBA as well. So we got lots of content coming your way. Make sure you hit that notification bell and check out the RG page every day to help you win some money.
Yeah, definitely. And on that note, good luck, and I hope you have a good one. And hit the like button.